In her new book, What Happened? Hillary Clinton says in no uncertain terms that she has run her last campaign and will not be a candidate for president ever again. Which, if you know the Clintons, means that is the official start of the Hillary Clinton for President 2020 bid. The Trump Report starts now!
You're tuning into the destination for TV superfan discussion, AfterBuzz TV. And now, let the buzz begin!
Oh, that's right. Last week I said I should have used that song Supertramp did called Dreamer because we were talking about all the dreamers. And I like the idea so much, we went with it this week, and sadly, dreamers are still in the news. And before we dive into the show and the panel and everything, for our YouTube audience, I'd like to have Anthony in the booth bring up the thumbnail that our friend Marissa made for this specific episode. So if you are just listening on iTunes, we'll tweet it out from @TrumpReportABTV. But as you'll see, Super Trump Dreamer, and that's some nice work with the Supertramp logo, and we appreciate our friend Marissa here at AfterBuzz doing that for us. Anyway, welcome to the Trump Report, the Super Trump Report. I'm Christian Bladt at ChristianDMZ, joined as always by Chelsea Galicia. To my left, camera right for those watching on YouTube, at Chelsea Galicia.
Yes, thank you. Hi.
And her co-host from The Political Beat, which just ended mere minutes ago, Drexel Hurd, at Drexel Hurd.
Hello.
And at the far end of the desk, and the far end of the political spectrum, not really true, it just sounded like a thing to say.
In that case, I should be over
Yeah, I know,
there.
you should be
like
on-
I'm
No,
far
actually,
off camera.
Chelsea needs to be 2 studios over. Scott Moore at SMan80, welcome
Hello.
to the Trump Report. And Anthony, when you have a chance, if you could bring up the chat in YouTube so we can chat with our friends, including our friend Shareable Texas, who we'll give a big shout out to in a little bit. So that's basically, I'm teasing one member of the audience to stay tuned. He's like, oh, well, they're going to talk about me. I'm not going anywhere. Anyway, so we did start off with Dreamer, and last week we talked about DACA, which I put in my notes again, is the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, because I wasn't going to remember. And it's still at the forefront of the news this week. One of the first things we saw was that, or one of the most recent things we saw, multiple recipients of DACA were detained for hours yesterday at a Customs and Border Protection checkpoint in Texas, which is interesting because President Trump did say that nobody had anything to worry about for 6 months. The fact that it didn't last 6 days before someone was detained, what does that tell you, Chelsea?
Are we surprised?
Are you surprised?
No.
You don't seem surprised.
No, I'm surprised that you're surprised.
I didn't say I was surprised. I was just wondering what you thought about it. Do you think that means that the 6 months is kind of a non-issue? It's non-existent.
Well, when you pardon Arpaio, and you just, that means you get to do whatever you want, unconstitutional, against a court order, and Trump will probably pardon you. So really, there's no rule of law anymore. It's funny because wasn't this the Law and Order campaign? Supposed to be Law and Order administration. But one of the really interesting things that I found about these DACA people that are coming out sharing their stories is how many of them didn't even know that they either weren't born here or had been brought here illegally. And they only find out that they don't have a social security number when they ask their parents because they're going to go apply for a job.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's probably a good thing for a parent to that's sort of not the real issue here. But at the same time, it's like, especially now that it might create problems, you probably want to let your kids know whether or not. So look, we don't really talk about it, but because it's unfortunately it's going to be a pretty severe problem. And I think it's also politically a problem, Drexel, for the congressional leaders, and also even, President Trump kind of expected there'd be some replacement for this or something new that he can point to, being the better, the new, different, stronger DACA. But now they don't seem to have the 6 months to work with. And I think it's more of an issue for, congressional Republicans who are like, hey, we need some brown votes. We need to make sure that we don't alienate everyone who doesn't look like Jeff Sessions.
Well, we know that that Republicans aren't really the party of black and brown people. So that's not going to be a thing. That's just not going to happen. However, I was reading today that Donald Trump had a dinner in the White House that included congressional Democrats like Nancy Pelosi. After last week's debt ceiling and Harvey package meeting, and we talked about it on the show just in the last hour on the Political Beat about the fact that Donald Trump really likes the wins. He really likes the press that he gets when he is working across the aisle, like it's a new concept. Like Democrats have saved him. Like they do, like Democrats have saved Donald Trump in the press, like Democrats have saved Republicans over the last few years since they've been in the majority when it comes to votes, because we know the Freedom Caucus is not helping them out, so they need Democrats to do things. But in this meeting with Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer, Donald Trump said to them that all he wants is more border security. He wants to work with them on bipartisan. He now wants to work with them on bipartisan legislation for tax reform without Republicans if he needs to. He now wants to work with Democrats on immigration. He might not necessarily, from what I read today, it was in the New York Times Politico. He might not want to focus on the wall so much, funding for the wall, but that he wants to focus on additional border security, which Democrats have always voted for increased funding for border security. Like I said, I think Donald Trump really is more interested in what that looks like politically for him. If he can be seen from the New York Times and Maggie Haberman and all these people coming out being like Donald Trump is some independent candidate aside from his party, and we're like, who are you people? What administration have you been watching over the past 9 months? He might be saying, maybe if I work a little bit harder with the Democrats, I'll get better press, because that's really all he cares about. But it's not going to make him look good on his favorite show, Fox and Friends. But it will make him look great on mainstream press. So he might flip back over to MSNBC and CNN.
But not Morning Joe.
But he might call in to Morning Joe because, well, like we saw, no presidential candidate ever has called in to a show like Donald Trump did during the last campaign.
All interesting thoughts. Scott, as you sort of see this, as you see the dream unraveling, unfortunately, for all the dreamers. Maybe I was trying too hard to be clever there. I'm
Way
just
to call yourself out.
Yeah, I'm just saying, because once I said it out loud, I was like,
Right.
well, that wasn't good. I'm just sort of wondering what you think about sort of what we've already covered, but also I was reading just a little while before we came here that LA County, just this is a very local issue, but they voted for a 1-year restriction on county, government travel to 9 states that have threatened legal action in order to preserve the ban on DACA. So no LA County, city, basically government business to Texas, Alabama, Arkansas, Idaho, Kansas, Louisiana, Nebraska. Oh, South Carolina and West Virginia. That was a lot of
I
states.
can't imagine those states are crying because I don't
Right.
think that we were going
We're
there.
really
too
going there
often.
anyways.
Right. I think it's more a matter of sort of
Just,
like setting the trend.
Yes, exactly.
Because if it's like, oh, yeah, okay, so they've said, they've kind of done the homework for other businesses or other governments that are like, yeah, we're also not going to do businesses there. Look, I mean, it's a completely separate issue, but the bathroom law in
That
North Carolina
Right.
was effective.
They were very hard hit when a number of high-profile just concerts
Right, and
pulled
that's why it
out.
didn't pass in Texas,
Yeah.
because they realized, money talks, and when they don't have these concerts and games and events
like
coming through.
the one Bruce Springsteen canceled show in North Carolina was enough to be like, wait, we would have gotten a ton of money for that. Anyway, so your thoughts kind of on all of that. I threw a lot of DACA at you.
Well, I was going to say, kind of on both sides here from what you guys were just saying. Like, first of all, Donald Trump loves anything positive about Donald Trump. So kind of going back to what you were saying, Drexel, is like, he'll work with anyone if he's going to get positive press, because he hates the negative press that he's gotten the past 9 months. And so that's why he's going to cut a deal with the Democrats, because if the mainstream press is going to suddenly think he's great and wonderful, then he's going to keep doing stuff like that because he doesn't care about anything else. And then on the same side, and we'll get to this later about the hurricanes, but I think he's been, and I know it sounds terrible to say, but I think he's actually glad that the hurricanes have taken the focus off the negative press on him with the Russia probe and everything else, because now it's all been focused on recovery and the events unfolding with Harvey and Irma the past couple weeks, and that's taken all the negative press off of him. So again, he's glad to get any of that negative press off of him and away from him.
When you think about just sort of, this has been a week focused on disasters between hurricanes and yesterday the remembrance of 9/11. There's a lot of like, oh, okay, let's let him do the things that the president needs to do, and we'll just sort of we'll focus on some of these other things. But he's not getting hit in the same way, because it's like, all right, well, president has to go down to see some. I don't know if he's gone to Florida yet, but
He's
did.
going tomorrow.
I saw that he
or
went
Thursday.
to Texas.
Yeah.
And, and that's the thing I think we talked about last week, regardless of politics, if it makes you better that you see the president, came there. Or I think Beyonce and a few other people, Janet Jackson, I heard that they went out there. So, if any of that makes you feel better, it's like, well, I lost my house, but I did get to see Beyonce.
That would make me feel better. Compared to I'd rather see her than Donald Trump any day of the week.
No. Would you rather see her than have a house?
If I was in a hurricane, because I'm from Florida, and
Sure, so you're used to the idea that your house could blow
If I didn't,
away.
I would much rather see her any day of the week than Donald Trump.
Drexel, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say there's a big celebrity concert coming up, including Beyonce and Justin Bieber and all these people that are going to be rocking out for
Rocking out for
Harvey. I'm going to say Harvey and Irma, because we keep talking
Now
about
there are a couple.
Harvey, but Irma, has done some not as much damage, extensive damage as Texas and the Gulf got hit, but
widespread,
Florida,
longer, more areas, and
Yeah.
definitely the Keys and a place I go to every year, Marco Island, was hit head on. So I was supposed to go in 2 weeks. I don't know if that's going to happen now. But back to DACA really quick. I would also mention the other issue that we have with Trump is he always does his stuff by decree on Twitter. And that doesn't work that way. And the back and forth, much like we saw with the transgender ban, it makes it very difficult for anyone to really realize what's going on. So how does the federal government even react to how to implement this 6-month period when he hasn't been very clear on it either? And that's part of the issue that you had with the transgender ban too. Like, sorry, we can't accept anyone anymore that's transgender into the military, but there was no way of laying it out on exactly what was going to happen and how that was going to be enforced. And the same thing you see with DACA right now.
How likely is that to be the 27th Amendment, that if you tweet something, it automatically
It's not
becomes
law.
Well, I mean, we
I
don't
think
have
it'll be the opposite.
No, but
It'll
as
be
soon
like-
as we have the new amendment, I think it's entirely possible. But it's like you have to get the bill in at under 140 characters. That's the only way you can pass it.
Actually, that would be really good. It's a
that
lot
is it.
easier to read.
You know what's so funny is that I posted yesterday on Facebook the Schoolhouse Rock "I'm Just a Bill,"
Oh, yeah.
which apparently Chelsea has never seen.
What?
But we'll talk about that
she's
later.
so-
Apparently, her schoolhouse did not rock.
We're going to talk about that later.
She's so young. That's why she didn't
And,
see it, because it was so...
That's true.
Yeah.
She is so young.
And I think somebody needs to sit. I mean, it's a cartoon, so Donald Trump will be able to pay attention. But somebody, I think, needs to sit him down to watch the Schoolhouse Rock. "I'm Just a Bill," and the preamble song.
Well, and also, let's be honest. Anybody that's read his tweets, he could probably use some conjunction junction. I think if we just go out there,
yes,
He really
yes,
could.
yes. That's,
All across
Chelsea,
the
you know
board.
what that is?
Just give him the whole series.
Conjunction.
All right, well, we're going to have to
remember that.
have her do a report on
With the
Schoolhouse Rock.
diorama.
Yes.
No, I think actually you'll act them out. Weren't we supposed to have some kind of smoothie or something that I remember
The
now?
kale
that,
smoothie. With
the kale smoothie.
With the avocado milk. That we're
What
gonna add
happened to
into
my
it.
kale smoothie with avocado milk? I forgot that I didn't actually put in an order for it. Anyway, we sort of touched on the hurricane, and obviously when you hear about all of this, always your thoughts are with everyone affected by Hurricane Irma. But in my notes, I wrote Irene, but I just remember
That was the one from 2011,
yeah.
which was retired and replaced with Irma.
Yeah. So then
And now
there
Irma
you
will
go.
be retired.
Yeah.
So
You
So
remember
they reuse
the
them?
names of
Oh,
every
I mean,
hurricane?
When you're from Florida, you always do it. But
Yes,
see,
of course.
here's the thing, and this is not the most political thing that we could talk about, but at the same time, it has bearing on elected officials and, of course, first responders. What's with people thinking they can just ride it out? I mean, it seems like in Houston there was a lot of like, no, we're all right. You guys can stay there. But, you see all the people on the news like, no, we're going to be all right. We're just going to ride it out. I mean, you're from Florida.
Yeah.
Like, what's the thinking that goes into that?
I think
Did
it's
you
just
know better?
Well, I think it's a little bit of that, but I also really do think it's because people feel more comfortable at home. It's still their home. They want to make sure that it's safe, and they feel more comfortable there. If they have pets, then they don't want to worry about bringing them to a shelter.
Yeah.
It's sort of that feeling of like, okay, I feel a little bit better just knowing what's going on at my house, and I have my own bed, and that kind of stuff. So
Doesn't
but-
matter if you're
but-
floating like
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
Exactly.
it's like I've got my house. No,
Yeah.
sure, it's going over a waterfall,
Right.
but I've got it.
Exactly.
I also think that.
But I think that's the mentality, though.
The other mentality is that, especially for Republicans living in those states, Texas and Florida, we saw Ann Coulter this weekend talk about Irma and how it wasn't a thing and how climate change was a thing, only to be shown that Miami was underwater. We saw Rush Limbaugh talk about Irma and how climate change was a hoax, blah, 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 all this stuff.
But as soon as he got off the air...
As soon as he got off there, only to leave the state of Florida.
Yeah.
Milo Yiannopoulos, the same thing. He was making a joke about Democrats and climate change and Irma, only to come back hours later to show us that his house had been destroyed. So I think that these people are sending these messages like, oh, it's fine. And then themselves being like, oh, it is not fine. And then being called out on those things. And so you're now leaving these people who trusted your judgment as they listen to you.
Thinking they're okay.
Thinking they're okay. And they're not leaving their homes. And I think that at some point, like we always say on this show, like we've said on Political Beat, Political Culture, whatever, in whatever this show was, is that Republicans don't tend to care about what you do, you or your family. They just care about what message they are getting.
Well, I mean, I think that I understand you could see that as a partisan issue. I think that the majority of politicians don't care that much about you and your family, especially the non-voting age members of your family. But you did touch on something that I sort of wanted to briefly talk about, which is you have all the people using the hurricane as an example to talk about how they don't believe in climate change. And I think what hurts people taking it seriously is how amidst the news coverage and the actual, like, here's what you're looking at live right now, you have people saying, yeah, this is happening because of man-made global warming and climate change. And I'm not saying whether or not they're wrong, but I'm just like, okay, but people hear you pointing that out at a time where they see people suffering, and I think it makes them dig in just that much more. I don't know that the solution is, well, we'll talk about that next week. We'll talk about that after the hurricane. But I don't think it helps. And I think it fuels the... selling books is what fuels Ann Coulter. But
Yes,
second
exactly.
from that,
And the attention, too.
Yeah, it's what fuels the mentality of a lot of people. And I don't know. I mean, Chelsea, do you think that could hurt the cause, or do you think it's just that important to say, hey, we have to do something so that these storms don't get this bad in the future?
I mean, I guess I'm trying to put myself in the shoes of somebody who's been a denier, and then you watch TV and you just want to know, like, do I stand a chance of coming back to a house that's still on the ground? And you don't want to, have that finger wagged at you and being told that you're wrong. But I don't know. When they, wait to, a week to talk about it, are these people really going to listen at that time? They might not be watching the news. This might be the last opportunity to mention the words and hope that they get it. So I'm not mad at the people who mention it, and I don't think there is a too soon. I mean, we've been talking about climate change since, like, I can remember.
Well, I think the first Earth Day was in 1970. So if you want to go back that far, it's sort of been something that we're trying to make people aware of, and we as in, a society.
So, I mean, we've tried to talk about it at different times. I don't know if waiting a week is going to make them any more receptive to it.
Maybe a new Schoolhouse Rock would help if you could do like a 3-minute cartoon that shows.
If they're
people.
bringing back the Magic School Bus on Netflix,
right.
they can bring back Schoolhouse Rock.
They made some like new Schoolhouse Rocks. I think like in the 90s, they weren't good. So
It's not the same.
Yeah, you got to get that hand drawn animation. You got to have that like 70s, like almost like blues funk style or whatever that was. I don't know. But
The one thing I want to bring up though, what I'm really interested in hearing from people is if you don't say you just, because people don't, if things don't affect them directly, it's hard for people to get on board with something. However, people now start to see that the climate is changing and things are happening. You might not believe necessarily that climate change is man-made in your head because it has not. You don't feel like you have contributed to something and it is not affecting you directly. However, Democrats have put policies in place that don't necessarily, from a corporation standpoint, that don't necessarily affect the consumer down at the bottom. That people, at the end of the day, if gas emissions or things like that are coming out, then like they don't necessarily reach the bottom of that people can actually be a part of. So they're not necessarily doing that. But but when it comes to like flood protection and protections for consumers and protections for families and all these things, all these pieces of legislation are being put into place, and Republicans are rolling them back That's something that should alarm people. Like, why would the state of Texas and the Trump administration roll back flood protections only to have Hurricane Harvey come a week later? And so that's something that people have to be mindful of, is that, again, like I said before, Republicans are doing everything they can to not protect you and your family, and Democrats over the years have been working very hard, whether or not you believe in climate change or not, to protect you and your family through regulations and through consumer protections. And that's something that separates Democrats from Republicans at the end of the day, and that's what people need to take into 2018.
Well, I don't know that he would ever say it, but the sort of wave of really strong hurricanes is probably helping an inconvenient sequel. So Al Gore, you have hurricanes.
Did you hear? There are 3 counties, I believe, or cities in Northern California that are suing the big oil companies for climate change.
I did not hear that. No.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Which? Where did you hear that story?
I read so many articles.
So it sounds like fake news to me. No, I'm just kidding.
No, I was going to say.
I just hadn't heard that.
Excuse me.
She's like, oh.
I know so many articles.
like,
I don't have the specific.
Excuse me while I type in fake news.
Chelsea and I share a New York Times
subscription.
subscription. So
if they knew that, they're gonna send her an email and be like,
wait, I need to share it on
we got to stay up to date.
Scott, you were gonna say something before I jumped in about an inconvenient sequel, which we still haven't seen with Stephen Helmkamp.
I know. Well, I've already seen it, but Stephen hasn't. Stephen, you need to come out and talk about it. Keep saying he's going to come back.
Well,
we should put the Swedish Chef on the couch.
I would love
I'm
that.
sure it would
Are you
make.
kidding? I would love that.
It would make as
If
much.
the Swedish chef could be on the couch, I'm sorry, you guys aren't coming that night. I'm talking to the Swedish chef for an hour.
We could just have Muppets here.
Right, the Muppets took the Hollywood Bowl last night.
Yeah.
But it would make as much sense as Stephen Helmkamp.
So what I'm talking about was on, very funny, the Mercury News. Come on
San
now.
Jose Mercury News. That's a
The Guardian,
yeah.
San Diego Union Tribune, Washington Post, Inside Climate News.
All right, so you've made the point that it's not fake news. Although, when you list off mainstream newspapers, there are people that will say, sounds like fake news, especially when you say Washington Post. Right. I'm not saying that. I'm just using
You're saying some people are saying. I'm hearing that some people are saying.
They're suing 37 fossil fuel companies over sea rise.
I can't imagine that those lawsuits would go anywhere, even in California.
Well, I don't know if you know this, but there are a group of kids suing the United States for trashing the environment, and their case has yet to be tossed out of court.
Now, how about that? Sharable Texas says Stephen doesn't even get a verse in his song, which is a great transition, Anthony. Let's calm down from the political fervor for a moment. And we're going to play a song that our friend, Sharable Texas, now there isn't a music video that goes with it, but Sharable Texas, if you have the time, you can go ahead and edit together clips of the show or whatever you'd like to do if you want to make a music video for it. But this is our shot right here. This is a great look at Sharable Texas, who is not a Texan. And so we'll share with our audience, both our video audience and our audio audience, on
Be prepared for
iTunes,
the best thing ever.
An amazing song from our friend Sharable Texas. So please, Anthony, let us hear.
Enjoy.
Sharable Texas is on fire. Sharable Texas is on fire. Sharable Texas.
Listen to the trumpet board on AfterBuzz TV. If you're looking for the best politics, then believe me, they're laying down knowledge like a bomb on the weekly. It's easy. Subscribe to iTunes or at least read reviews. They give you the news. At least tell me, baby, what you got to lose. Who's on the show? Better yet, who's next? They bring on guests to keep the show real fresh. You know who's the best? My main man Drex. He dresses like he never runs out of checks. What else man 80? There's no debating that when he's come singing, he knows exactly what he's saying. Listen, folks, it's not all serious. Christian has some jokes when you're feeling all furious. My theory is, this period is crucial. We need to come together when we need to be useful. Chelsea, I'm wondering if you can help me. I got hurt falling for you when you took the selfie. What the hell, please? Sorry, I just started melting when I see you take a shot at the wealthy. Look, we really need to talk about Brooke. She's so damn moderate, my heart got shook. But if you could at least just say to her, if I went on a date with her, I wouldn't run away from her. I have faith in her, and I wish her luck in her major. Nobody's smarter than Brooks Lee Taylor.
You know, if Brooke doesn't at least have coffee with shareable Texas, I feel like that was a lot. That's the most elaborate way to ask someone out.
Listen,
Grammy for that
shareable
one.
Texas, thank you.
Great.
And oh yeah, we can leave it up. That's right.
I kind of want the Thug Life glasses to go over his face at the end of that with Thug Life at the bottom.
That would be amazing.
Rex never runs out of checks. It's just brilliant.
I've never seen you run out of checks.
Tell my bank account that.
Anyway, so thank you, Shareable Texas. And if you want to write a rap song about us, we'll play it on the show too.
Yeah, and
so
if you
please
wanna,
tweet us.
If you want to write a rap song about a political beat too, we need a good beat. We have a good beat at the top of our show. We always love good beats, though.
Nice
But we got beats first, so thank you, Shareable
amazing.
Texas. But follow him on Twitter at Shareable Texas. That's right, free plug for at Shareable Texas.
He said this is the best moment ever.
You know, if Lady
was the
Goth
best
wants
thing
to
ever.
write a song for us, it doesn't have to be rap. That's fine. You know, I mean, I don't know if Lady Goth means she likes, you know, like Marilyn Manson or something. I'm sorry, I'm not cool enough to know what real goth music is.
And no,
The
Steven doesn't get a
Smiths?
verse.
Hey, if Steven writes a song with a verse for himself, that's fine. It'd be on a banjo if I had to guess. Anyway,
Isn't he from Florida?
Yes, he is.
is.
Well, from the Panhandle, so he wasn't even affected
He's-
either. Just like no verse, he's nowhere near.
he's writing it out right now. That's where Steven is. He's writing
That
it
cute
out.
dog of his.
Buddy. We got a buddy on the show. Anyway, thank you again, Shareable Texas.
That was awesome.
So, sort of a light topic. Sebastian Gorka is predicting more Trump administration ousters. I want everybody to think sort of your just gut reaction. We'll start with Scott. Who's next? Who's out next?
Well, besides Trump, I still
No,
think
because
he's
that's
gonna
not
be out.
next.
I know.
Because you know that's a
I
long
know.
drawn out process.
I know it's a long term thing. I still want to go with Kellyanne because I feel like she's
you've been
still
pull-
been
yeah, you
like
put so
hiding
much
under
money
the
on
radar
Kellyanne.
and just hanging out.
You're
and,
all in on Kellyanne.
Yeah, and I've been trolling her a lot lately, so I'm hoping at some point she'll be out. So I'm still gonna go with her next, but I know
Okay.
it probably won't be, but still gonna
You
go
just
with her.
feel, all right, that's fine.
Going
Drexel.
with my gut.
I would say that Kellyanne. I would say that Omarosa is next.
That's
But
what
she's
I
like
was
the
gonna say.
unofficial.
But I
though,
feel
right?
like Omarosa. Here's the thing.
No, but unofficial advisors
Yeah.
have.
Yeah,
already
and
been-
Right.
John Kelly's already carved her kind of out, and kind of set her aside, and but here's the thing though, Donald Trump though does not. He is now surrounded by generals and women. You know, today the White House hired Hope Hicks as the new communications director. She's only 28. She's a very young communications director, which is a really awesome thing for a woman, a female communications director. Is
Wait,
amazing.
how old was
Not
C.J.
that-
Craig?
She was never communications director.
Oh,
that
you're
was
right. She was secretary.
Toby Ziegler.
Yeah, that's right. But Toby was definitely over 28. Anyway.
But yeah, so I don't know that. I think in Donald Trump's eyes, keeping Omarosa around is more for show. Like he's kept Ben Carson around for some reason, and he kind of parades his black friend around, around the
exactly.
United States, which is why he takes Elaine Chao everywhere now. You know what I mean? Why would the transportation secretary be in Texas talking about Hurricane Harvey with the president of the United States? Like, I just don't understand why she was there. I just don't know if he's going to get, like, we say Kellyanne, we say Omarosa, but they're not. The central casting of the Trump administration would take a hit if he got rid of some of these people.
By the way, our Scott Brown says Omarosa gotta go, sir. So I thought that was.
Omarosa got to go. So.
Yeah, I didn't say it
trying to
right.
rhyme
That
it.
black has cracked. Just going to
I'm so glad you said that. Just imagine maybe the rest of us. I'm just not gonna. So
I'm
was
not gonna
Omarosa who you were gonna pick?
Well, I had another idea too, but I'm debating between Rex
Is it Pence?
Tillerson
Oh, okay.
and Scott Pruitt.
You're going cabinet official.
Yeah, you're
Well,
going up.
look, I think Rex
Yeah.
Tillerson has already kind of taken himself.
haven't
He's
seen
kind
it.
of
Yeah.
he's kind of
not
checked
seen it.
out.
Yeah,
It's like
he's.
Weekend at Bernie's. I don't know where he is. Like,
I don't know if I said this
And you're
already.
talking Bernie Sanders.
Who will come up shortly, by the way. I don't know if I said this already, but I feel like Rex Tillerson has become Wilson, the next door neighbor on Home Improvement. You know, you hear a voice on the other side of the fence.
Yeah.
But it's like, do you really know that he's there?
Right.
You know, just press releases.
You don't see
and
him.
You don't know that he's there.
That's the best job ever, by the way. How can I get that job?
To
where
be
I could,
Wilson?
Well, yeah, where you could just kind of,
Yeah.
no one has to actually see you and you're getting paid.
I have a surprising choice, and because he seems to be the one person that's focused on getting things done, trimming the fat, and sort of really getting everything focused. I think General Kelly's next to go. He's going to just be like, wait, this is too much. I'm actually getting shit done.
I was gonna say that General Kelly, like I was just going through Donald Trump's tweets. Like we haven't really seen him tweet anything crazy. And I was actually shocked because he tweeted today about books or whatever, and I'm sure he was alluding to Hillary Clinton's book. But instead of going, he did not all day today go after Hillary Clinton on a day that is very much a Hillary Clinton day. And he just said, people who write books about me and articles about me don't really know anything about me. And I'm like, actually, you guys are from the same stage. She knows a lot about you, and probably has a lot of Oppo research on you. But in old Trump, from a Reince Priebus and Anthony Scaramucci 10 days, it would have been a very different response.
Yeah, crooked Hillary this and crooked Hillary that, and this and that. Yeah.
And if you saw through 9/11, even though he talked through the 9/11 ceremony yesterday, if you he's still a toddler. He's still got to grow up into preteen. He's still got to get there. Then that's what we're kind of seeing a new General Kelly tightening the reins a little bit.
Well, you mentioned Hillary Clinton's book tour, and I did allude to it in the beginning. As she talked about a lot of things in there. One of the most fascinating things that I've not read the book. I think it came out. Did it come out today?
Oh, it's on my Kindle. We're having.
I think you're saying I already read it all night.
We're having a show on it next week on the Political Beat.
We're gonna have a book club.
Well, good. I will watch that so I don't have to read it, just because it's long. It's not anything.
It's 500 pages.
It's not personal. Yeah. Where am I going to find the time?
It's the 7th Harry Potter book. Did you read that?
No, I don't read.
Oh well.
I don't read Harry Potter books. They make movies out of them. Did you know that? But anyway, you know what? They'll make a movie out of this too.
He's that guy.
So one of the most interesting things I found, though, was that on election night, as the returns started to come in and they were painting a bad picture, what did Hillary do? Oh, she took a nap. So I would like to take this opportunity to apologize to our aforementioned friend Stephen Helmkamp, who got a lot of grief on this panel when he said he was worried about her, about how Senator Clinton, maybe her health wasn't great.
Secretary Clinton.
She was a senator too, though.
Yeah, but secretary is a better
first lady, Lotus. But he was talking a lot about her health, and that obviously is something that gets thrown around. Allegedly, that helped bring down Margaret Thatcher, just asking if she looked tired. But you know what? Here's the thing: Hillary was really tired. On election night, of all nights, she's like, oh, yeah, I can't. This is the time to sleep.
Yeah, but don't you think that was a way for her to kind of avoid everything?
Al Franken would have found a way to buy a lot more votes. That's what he would have done.
I was just listening to, so they just released the podcast with her, if you haven't. It was a campaign podcast, and they brought it back today, and coinciding with the book tour. And she did talk about why she took a nap, which was she really didn't, she was watching the return, she needed to get away, she needed to decompress. Right. She went out to take a quick little nap to regroup herself so that she could come back and hopefully the returns would be better. And then she kind of walked into the room and then saw these grim faces. I mean, if you watched the election night with us, I mean, it was a very different. I mean, you'd see the same story.
You can still find that if you want to watch. You
can watch me
Trump versus Hillary live. If you watch us live on Trump versus Hillary, I think it had more than 5,000 views. By the way, our election night coverage. So why not step back in history? Almost a year ago, by the way.
Don't remind me.
Demonot says Clinton putting the blame on everyone except herself. I think that's probably, it's not entirely the case, but she is blaming a lot of people, including...
Yes.
Yeah, but you finish your thought.
But I was going to say, the articles that I've been reading say that she has really taken a lot of responsibility, that she said, ultimately the messaging was my call. Yeah. The campaign was my call. Choosing to not go to certain states was my call. And so I do take ultimate responsibility. She did say that she shouldn't have used the private email server, that was a bonehead mistake. So I don't think it's fair to say that she's blaming everyone but herself. But the list of people that she blames is very interesting. Of course, everybody likes to harp on the Bernie one.
Well, I mean, it is kind of interesting because she said that he was an overpromiser, and what he was telling people they would get was a little more than a pipe dream, and it would have led to raising taxes on middle-class families. Chelsea, what does that make you think when you hear that?
It makes me think that she wasn't listening.
It's entirely possible.
Look at how composed
I know.
they are.
I'm like, what happened?
I know. It was very,
She's
very
got
calm.
plenty of kale flowing through her veins. She's not getting
But
angry.
here's the thing. Bernie talked most about the fact that Wall Street regulates Congress rather than Congress regulating Wall Street, and that all the income from the recovery has all gone to the top. That is the central theme of what he said.
Right.
And so Hillary saying that all he talked about was her ideas, but a step above them, I really don't think that she was listening to what he was actually saying. And none of the ideas that he was talking about were like original Hillary ideas that he then just like, yeah, I'm going to take that and one-up it. He's been talking about Medicare for all or something similar for a long time, and Drexel might chime in here and say that she's been a proponent of universal health care for many a decades now.
Decades.
But Medicare for all, she's like, that's not going to happen. And now you look,
That's
and
not
it's,
what she said, but continue.
and now it is
Speaking of the
becoming,
Muppets, it seems like Statler and Waldorf are in there tonight.
it's becoming somewhat of a mainstream conversation among Democrats. And Kamala Harris and Elizabeth Warren have jumped on to Bernie's bill. Oh,
Cory Booker?
Bernie's bill is coming out tomorrow.
Yeah,
Okay.
which is
Okay.
something I
So,
figure we'll
all
talk
right.
about
Oh my
next
gosh,
week, by the way.
I
we have less than 10 minutes,
Right.
so let's make sure.
Okay, so
Jackson
here's
get
the
in.
thing about this book, because I know people like Lady Goth and all these.
Oh, Lady Goth. I really thought you
all
said Lady
these-
Gaga. I'm like, wait, Lady
and all
Gaga
these-
talks about this
and
book?
all these
she's blamed in the book?
more left people of me who don't quite understand this.
Uh-oh. What
At the
don't I
end of the day-
understand? Oh. What about the beginning?
Beginning of the day, Hillary Clinton naming people in a book, seeing it in a headline saying that she's blaming people is a little.
Well, she's
it's a
trying
little
to
it's a
explain
little
what
stretch.
happened.
Yeah, you can't necessarily. So, and I was talking to Chelsea before Political Beat about a couple of names like Joe Biden, like naming Joe Biden and talking about it in a paragraph. If you haven't read it, which I'm sure Lady Goth has not. And I'm sure Chelsea has not, and I have not either.
I have read the articles that quote
The
her,
articles
so-
that quote certain parts of the book. But if say Hillary Clinton did a whole chapter on Bernie Sanders, a whole chapter on blaming Bernie Sanders, instead of here's Bernie Sanders, here's what I said, here's what he said, here's how this happened, and here's the chess game that we kind of played during the primary. If it had been all about blame Bernie, blame Joe Biden for saying this after me, blame Barack Obama, blah, 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 then that people can say she spent most of her time blaming people.
And
in
she'll also
500
sell
pages.
more books if it's like
Right,
that.
if it's like that.
Yeah.
But that's not necessarily. I mean, I listened to her interview on Pod Saves America this morning. I listened to her interview on CBS.
Wherever she was walking
on
around with Jane
CBS,
Pauley,
on
that's
CBS, on
what I
Jane
saw.
Pauley on
Yeah.
Sunday. And you don't get this sense that, like Chelsea said at the beginning, that she's necessarily blaming them outright. James Comey, we know, sat on Trump information during the campaign. How can you not say that James Comey was a problem for Hillary Clinton in the campaign? That's not blaming him. That's stating the fact. You cannot say that Bernie Sanders coming in as a non-Democrat, Democrats allowing him to be a part of this their primary position, and then not being a Democrat on the other side and still tearing down the party is not a problem for a candidate like Hillary Clinton who's trying to keep the Democrats together. That is the fact, and that is a problem for somebody like Hillary Clinton. Barack Obama's the same way. You know, so you get to pretend like these things are not to pretend like these things aren't real is crazy to me, because I'm like, either you're in denial that these people were partly to blame, or we just were watching a different campaign. We just were watching a different campaign.
One of the interesting complaints was about President Obama, and that she wonders what would have happened if earlier he had come out and done some announcement about Russia is messing with our democracy, warning the American people what was going on, if he had made a bigger deal of it. I hear that Mitch McConnell was like, you are not going to have to do that.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, of course.
But I don't know why that would stop the president from doing it. It's not like Mitch McConnell was going to let anything Obama
Because
wanted to.
because if you remember the last 8 years of Barack Obama, he's a very cautious person.
Right.
And the idea that he was going to take blame, the idea that Barack Obama was going to get blowback for anything.
Why? This was
Well, I think he was worried too. If he did that, that
would've
somehow
caused-
it was going to be like you were interfering with the election now yourself, because now you're trying to say that
And Republicans like Mitch McConnell
they're
would have
trying
spent
to
it
help
that way.
Right. That
Yeah, I
you're
would
trying to say that the
in
Republican now you can't.
President Obama's head, he's had every floor and every section of his presidential library like mapped out for probably since he was reelected. Like that next day, he's like, all right, here's where everything's going to go. And he's like, I don't want to do anything that messes with any of that. I don't want there to be, if you've ever gone to the Nixon library or the Bill Clinton library, there are sections where they're like, yeah, we got to address a couple of things that aren't something we're really happy. He doesn't want that section. He doesn't want the born in Kenya section
At the very beginning.
Yeah,
when you walk in.
That one was a joke. But what I was going to say before we run out of time is that Hillary Clinton should have written this book before she ran for president and sold it during the campaign, because if you look at her book tour, where's she going? Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin. She's going all the places that Robbie Mook said, hey, you don't need to go there, especially not Wisconsin. We're good. So if she had the book and she was trying to sell it, she just wasn't selling herself as hard as she's selling the book.
She could have done what I would have done.
Right.
She said she wasn't allowed to be.
I was going to say, didn't OJ write a book like that?
She didn't get as angry as the electorate wanted her to be. She didn't realize that people were so angry,
And I think,
so she looked like
I
think you saw that Barack Obama had to go through that situation because he didn't want to be labeled the angry black man. And I think you saw that with Hillary Clinton or any female candidate by saying we don't want to be labeled as hysterical, because a hysterical female candidate, Donald Trump would have just wiped the floor with.
It would have been hysterical
It would have been
Hillary.
hysterical
Yes,
Hillary,
exactly.
and then that was what it would have been.
That sounds so much better than crooked Hillary.
Right.
Yeah.
So I just encourage people to not read these headlines, because I actually only read 2 excerpts, and there were 2 excerpts that Chelsea and I were texting back and forth to each other about Bernie Sanders, and I have not read a single excerpt of the book since then. Because I actually just want to see what it says. And then next week, you can watch the Political Beat and we'll tell you all about it.
Would that be Tuesdays at 6 Pacific, 9 Eastern on AfterBuzz TV? A couple comments from Lady Goth, because we did, I'll put all the blame on Drexel. Drexel did, so she says, you don't think some of her comments are splitting the party even more? And I'll read her follow-up comment. And please don't mistake my glib comments for an inability to understand nuance.
So, no, I don't think
take 1 minute to respond to that,
I
because we
don't
have to
think
wrap
that
it
her
up.
comments are splitting the party even more. I think that the party was already split. There's not going to ever be a good time to write a book. Barack Obama has a book coming out next year. Joe Biden has a book coming out next year, and who knows what they're going to say.
And she has a right to have a book coming out,
And
too.
we didn't say when the Tea Party was going through their thing, when the Republicans were going through their thing, did Mitt Romney and did John McCain not have to figure their stuff out going forward? So and
they're currently split. The Republican Party.
And Our Revolution came out after the primary. I think after the primary. A book came out after the primary. Would you say the same thing about Bernie Sanders? Do you think that Bernie Sanders' comments in Our Revolution split the party? Because I can show you a passage in Our Revolution.
I'm like, take us to church.
That Chelsea,
Yeah.
you seem like you have something you want to say, so take like 30 seconds.
Well, what I asked Drexel, I'm like, this Steve Bannon interview, should we talk about this? He's like, it's garbage. We don't need to talk about it.
It was garbage.
But
I wanted to talk about it, but we ran out of time.
But the one thing that he said that was fascinating to me was about how Mitch McConnell stormed into the office like day one and was like, enough with this drain the swamp thing.
Because
So
he is the swamp.
Yeah.
He doesn't want to
master.
drain.
It's turtle shell.
Yeah, it's like putting leeches on him to, basically take
That's
his
why.
life force away.
So that's what Bernie and that's what Trump had in common.
That they wanted to drain the swamp?
He
one
had a
extreme,
different.
on one
He
side
had a
and the other.
different. Bernie had a different, term for it.
But it's the same idea. I'm just asking.
Yes.
That's
Yeah.
what Bernie Sanders had in common with President Trump.
Yes.
I'm just trying to get you to say something that's quotable.
I mean, they both have 2 arms and 2 legs, also.
Are you sure?
Well, birds of a feather.
Yeah.
Yikes.
We've always said it's like a circle. It comes back around, like on one extreme and the other extreme.
And so finally...
but she doesn't. So she doesn't see that her message and that she failed to say something like, "Some people are screwing you over, and I'm going to go after them." That would have resonated with voters.
I don't
and Lady Goth says if she makes something, maybe she is going to make a song. You can definitely send it to us on Twitter at Trump Report ABTV or me at Christian DMZ, Chelsea at Chelsea Galicia. I'm going to say one more thing. We're going to give all the Twitters now. At Drexel Hurd, at SMan80 for Scott Moore.
right.
And Drexel sort of touched on it very briefly. I wanted to take one final minute and say that yesterday was 9/11, and it is always a fairly emotional day for me because, as you may or may not know, I lived in New York until about 15 years ago, and I am of the frame of mind that I think you should always take at least a moment. You don't have to spend your whole day thinking about it, but I'm glad to see that we still get the remembrances. And, Drexel had a little comment about President Trump. In general, from what I saw, I was like, good, he's just standing there looking presidential. That's all I wanted. He maybe talked too much at other times, but what I saw, I was like, good, he's from New York. He knows that that's kind of, that's a bit of sacred ground.
Really?
But
Was that before or after he was on the...
that's what I'm saying. I
Yeah,
didn't
right.
see that part. But
When
what
he
I
said he
did
now
want
had the
to
tallest
call
one.
out was someone who decided that this was an opportunity to say something overly political. And I did see this retweeted around. This is from someone named Charles Johnson, who runs the website littlegreenfootballs.com. And his quote was, "The 9/11 attacks were a horrific event in U.S. history, but the election of Donald Trump will be seen as equally disastrous, if not more so." Hey, Charles Johnson, go fuck yourself. I'm not a fan of this president as a man, and I've really seen much I like out of the White House, but you don't compare those two things. You can maybe, if in 100 years people want to say, well, here's the... But that is very offensive to anyone who cares about the people who died that day. You don't have to have friends. You don't have to have family. I just, I saw that and that upset me. So I wanted to end on that positive note because I hadn't told anybody to fuck themselves on the show, at least not since Steven stopped being on the show. But anyway, I just wanted to get that in there. And I just, to me, I like to think about, the 2,997 people who died that day and why they died, and sort of it's just remembering how sad I was that day.
Are we out of time, or do I have time?
We are out of time.
Dang.
So, but you can hold that thought.
It was a 9/11 story, but a hero that I had not heard about.
Well, take 30 seconds. Anthony will be angry, but
Melendez Perez was the guard that stopped the fifth hijacker from getting on the plane to the one that crashed in the field
Sure,
in Pennsylvania.
yeah.
And the theory is that if the fifth hijacker had gotten on that flight, maybe the passengers wouldn't have been able to overpower.
Right. Yeah.
And
No,
it would have hit the
that
White
is a
House.
that is a good. I'm glad you took the time.
And then,
Uh-oh.
so the fifth hijacker was eventually found, and he was taken to Guantanamo Bay, and there he disclosed the name. I mean, not probably because he wanted to disclose it, but
Right.
he told the name of the courier that then led them to bin Laden. So this one guy,
Well-
Jose Melendez Perez, I believe is his name, is twice a hero.
Well,
Yeah.
now we're going to get a movie out of it.
And
Yes.
President Trump would have kept him out of the country with a name like that. So you
exactly.
see, that it all comes together. And boy, I'm glad we don't have time to talk about Guantanamo Bay and being able to get information out of political prisoners.
Yeah.
Because I'm glad to hear that story. Anyway, we are over time, but thanks to everybody who joined us in the chat. We'll see you next Tuesday. 10 Pacific. No, 10 Eastern, 7 Pacific,
Pacific.
and the political beat at 9 Eastern, 6 Pacific. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
From executive producers Maria Menounos, Kevin Undergaro, Phil Svitek, and the entire AfterBuzz TV staff, we would like to thank you for listening to the AfterBuzz TV network. To watch or listen to other after shows and post comments or questions, be sure to visit AfterBuzzTV.com. I'm Sir Richard Wentworth, and this has been a presentation of AfterBuzz TV.
Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.